Gonna start a new project. I want to build a gate, and I had this beam. This was one beam I cut in half. It was left over from a construction project, but not one of mine. It was a construction project next to mine. The contractor pulled up and left this beam on the ground. So I took it. It's monstrous. It's a 6 by 12. It was 19 feet long. And it's been over here on the ground for 7 years, I think, or 6 years. And it was propped up on board, so it wasn't on the dirt. And it's lasted pretty good. It's got a little bit of punky wood on one end. But this is going to be my gate posts. And I'm not sure about anything else, but this is the start. This is one of my cypress boards that I was going to use for the top of the gate, like a western deal where you have a overhead, a fixed overhead. And it's a pretty big board, but it looks kind of puny next to the vertical, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I know I've got to make it bigger than that. So I'll probably take 4 of them and glue them together and try to get a piece with an arch at the top that is a little more the correct size. Got the first glue up for the top arch piece.
After the glue dried overnight, I ripped this beam to 14 3/4 to feed it through my 15-inch planer. My original intention was to leave one side a little rough so it would kind of match the verticals and only plane the other side for the proper glue up. But in the end, they both sides ended up getting planed, but it's going to be okay.
So I sprung this batten strip to get a curve for the bottom of my header. It's pretty arbitrary. I just bent it till it would look good. This is the inside face. It's plain smooth. So there'll be another matching one, so I'm going to glue them together to get a total of 4 inches thick. I think 4 inches thick will look better with the 6-inch thick columns. So on the ends, so on the end, this is the column line, the inside of the column line. I started the curve back a few inches on each side, and that's so that I want to cut the curve now, because this is 2 inches thick, glued together is 4 inches thick. It's going to be hard for me to cut 4 inches thick. So I'm going to cut the curves on both faces before I glue them together. And I don't want to try to be making a joint, this tenon dealing with this curved face. So I just started it back a little bit. So I'm going to cut this curve, and then I'm going to see what looks good for the top curve. And I'm going to go get 2 more boards and glue them together for the other face. And then I'll glue the 2 faces together. And then I'll have then we'll have a substantial beam to go across the top, even though it's not really doing anything, except maybe keeping the columns from leaning together when the gates are hung on them. It's strictly aesthetics. It's strictly for looks. Alright, I didn't try for anything fancy. I just used the waist and moved it up almost 11 inches. And I'm going to do the same curve at the top. I'm going to go ahead and kind of rough out my tenons and make this cut. And then I'll get this out the way and glue up my second face.
This is the glue up of the second face. These joints won't match the first face. And now I have the same curve cut in it. I use the first piece as a template, and I ran it through the planer to get a smooth surface, and we glued them together with lots and lots of clamps and yellow glue. I had a few more clamps, but I ran out of strength in my wrist.
I was noticing when I was gluing this up that it had a wobble. And so now I've pulled all the clamps off. and I've taken a good look at it, and it has a definite twist to it, pretty good sized twist, so I have to work on getting that out. I could just hand plane it flat. I've got a power plane that'll pull it off pretty quick, or I can attach some kind of guides to it to run it through the thickness planer. I might have to scratch my head on this one for a minute. This is my attempted solution to fix the twist. I clamped 2 strips of plywood to the beam. I had a clamp in the middle, but it's not there right now. And I tapped, that end is higher on the near side, plywood is, and the other end it's higher on the far side. And I just tapped them around with a hammer until the winding sticks, which is these 2 sticks, looked very parallel. And I tightened the clamps, and I put a bunch of long screws to hold it. So now I'm going to take the clamps off. I'm going to turn it, flip it over from which way you see it now, and run it through the planer. And hopefully these strips of plywood will hold the board. I should get a parallel face on the opposite side, parallel with these plywood strips, and then I can take the plywood off, flip it back over, and get a parallel side on this side. And I got plenty of thickness to work with, so let's see. So my video camera is missing in action, so with the iPhone I wasn't able to get footage, but it worked really well. I made really light passes because we only have a moderate amount of support, but gradually the corners started coming down, and the last pass the entire surface got plane. So I'm going to take the guides off now and flip it over and make the other side parallel to this side, and I should have a straight beam. So the thickness planer did its thing, and in spite of this thing being very heavy, it worked well. And then I took the little electric power plane and smoothed out the top curve. And additionally, to smoothing it out, put a bevel on each side so it would shed rainwater a little bit, make it last a little bit longer. And I smoothed out the bottom curve, the concave curve. And now we're going to cut some joints. Marked both ends. Marked both ends. I came in 3 inches and referenced off the ends because I know the ends were square with each other. And I'm going to set the saw blade at 3/4 and cut it all the way around on both ends and remove that waste, and that'll be how big the tendon's going to be. Okay, 1 straight cut around each end and lots of relief cuts, and we'll chisel out all this extra. Alright, so I found my movie camera, so the quality should go up a little bit. These are my verticals. This was, like I said earlier, this was 1 long beam. I cut it in half. I got it in here on the work table by the damnedest, rolling it on these PVC pipes because I can't pick them up. I can pick one end up, but that's it. And they're soaking wet because it's been raining for a while here, but we are getting ready to go away for 2 weeks, so I'm going to let them sit inside and dry up enough where I can at least put pencil marks on them. I know they're never going to be dry, and that's no problem. They're just kind of slimy wet right now. Well, our 2-week trip got cut short by a hurricane on the East Coast, so these columns didn't have a full 2 weeks to dry out, only 4 days, but they are a lot drier now than when I started. At least I can make marks on them. So I thought about putting fancy bevels on top to kind of make them kind of cool. Then I realized they really ought to be covered with sheet metal at the top to keep the rain out. So I just cut a slope from front to back so they would drain. And then I have marked out the mortise on both of them. So I'm gonna chop that out next and fit these 3 pieces together.
Started out drilling relief holes with this bit that pulls itself in, and it really was just too much for my battery powered drill. I guess it wasn't sharp or something, but it was just a bear. So I put that away and got a spade bit, and that wasn't any better. I ended up using a brad point bit, twist drill bit, just like a metal bit. It was a 1/2 inch bit, and it went in really quickly, and I just deleted accidentally that video. But I used it. I drilled holes all the way around the outside of the mortise and started chopping with the chisel.
I know pine is classified as a softwood, but god dang, I've been beating on this thing for 2 hours it seems like, and I'm still not through with the first one, in spite of drilling holes around the circumference. So on the second one, I went to Home Depot and bought a very long blade for my jigsaw, and I measured with the drill bit on how deep it needed to go, and I had to cut like just a 1/4 inch off the bottom. Then I sharpened the bit, so when the bit's pounding down at the bottom of the hole, it won't jar the saw around too badly. So this is the plan, is to I'm going to cut the perimeter, and I'm going to cut twice in the middle, and I think that's going to make this one a whole lot quicker than the first one. First one is chopped out deep enough according to my combination square. This one is going to go much easier. That's what I'm talking about. Less than 3 minutes and I've got 80% of the material removed. So after I finished chopping the mortises, I put the header in there and pulled it in with a rope like a windlass. Not because it was tight, it's just everything's so heavy and bulky. And I didn't have to trim anything, it just dropped in. So it's not the tightest of fits, but it's fine. This is a static application. And then I drilled for 3 lag bolts. And with the tenon sticking in this far, I've got about 4.5 inches of each of the lag bolts going into the header. So I think that's going to be good. And I think I'll just put this joint together, maybe with a little caulk to keep the water out. I don't think I need any adhesive for structural issues because it's not going anywhere. So now I need to get this off and scoot everything over and stand this other column up and fit it up and get the bolts right for it. And I need to mark them because they're probably only going to fit one way. So I got the second joint fit up. It was a little more effort than the first one. I had to take it apart a few times and do some planing, but it's fit up. And I have the hole dug for this post. So I'm going to take this apart and move the column around the house and set it in a hole. Go get some concrete and set this first one, let it dry a few days before I try to hang the beam on top. that. So we got one 60-pound bag in, and got some water on it. We'll go get another bag. I have 3. It may not take all of those. Alright, first post is set. Second post will be a little more complicated because we'll have to put the header in at the same time we sink the post. So I'm going to let this concrete cure for a couple of days, and then we'll figure out how we're going to do that.
Strings along the property line and located where the column needed to go. And I put this metal stake on the back side of the column, but unfortunately, as soon as I start digging, that metal stake's going to be lost. So what I did was I just grabbed an arbitrary 2x4 and laid it against the metal stake and drove a wooden stub on the far side. So when I'm ready to set the column, I can use this board as a spacer. And the same with these two that are nailed together. These are the exact length of the header. So these 2 boards will locate the post when it's set in a hole, and I don't have to worry about using a tape measure while I'm struggling with the weight of the column. Okay, I got the hole dug a little bigger than the other one because I need to be able to move this post around a little bit to get the header in. So I'm going to go get the post. Once a column is dropped into the hole, the next battle is getting the right location in the bottom of the hole. The column needs to touch both of the guide 2x4s. It needs to be in the right location. It needs to be plumb at the same time. So you gotta check it, put the level on it, see which way the bottom needs to go, and then pry the bottom around. Usually it helps to put a 2x4 or 2 at the top of the hole, so you can push against those, and that kind of scoots the bottom in the opposite direction. And it's a give and take. You got to work at it. Once the bottom's in the right location, it really won't move. You can lean the column back over, and when you straighten it back up, it's going to still be in the right spot. But it took a little time, and you know, the whole thing is, because this column's heavy and I can't actually pick it up. So there's a lot of, you gotta outsmart this thing.
Alright, so I'm going to stand up here, put this end in that hole, and then I'm going to get this end in that hole, and what I'm going to do is just slide it, push the column over. See how it forces me? Yeah, that's pretty good.
got it.
I got the joints put together kind of loosely, and it was apparent that the column on the new column is much lower than the other one. And I was hoping for that because I can jack it up, but I can't. Like, once it's in the hole, there's nowhere I can make it go lower. So I did dig the hole a little deeper. So now I just need to lift it with the jack to get it level. Then I'll tighten my bolts. Then I will plumb the new column if it will move, and concrete it in. First try, some kind of record. Alright, so 3 bags of concrete mix, a half a bag of Portland cement, and about a dozen bricks, and the hole is filled. Side to side, the columns are very level. Front to back, this one's a little off, but it didn't want to twist. Apparently my mortise is twisted or something, but it's not bad. It's maybe an inch on the total height. So that wraps up this part of the video. The posts are set. We need to go build a gate. That's next.